Kenya is experiencing massive influx of hard cash, mainly in US dollars, amounting to about 72.2 billion shillings. That's $1.85 billion over 4 years. The ESAAMLG raises concerns about the lack of explanations and urges Kenya to strengthen its anti-money laundering and terrorism financing efforts to avoid grey listing. So joining me on the conversation from Nairobi, Kenya, I have Professor Iraki, who is an economist and associate professor of economics. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
And good morning.
So what factors could be contributing to the massive movement of cash, hard cash as the case is, into Kenya, out of Kenya over the past 4 years, especially in US dollars? And what potential implications does this trend have on the country's economy, its financial system, and of course, its image?
It's interesting that quite often you see some money being stopped at the airport, quite a huge amount of money. And that is a big concern because when a lot of such money is floating around, it has an effect on inflation. When there's so much money getting into the economy and you cannot explain where the money is coming from, then it has an effect on the inflation rate of the country, particularly so when it is in dollars. It also happens that such large amount of money has an effect on the weakness of the shilling, because if so many dollars are coming to the country, then the demand for the shilling goes up. And by extension, if the money is being changed, then the shilling can become stronger. So that hard currency has an effect on the value of the currency, but very important is it can lead to a very bad reputation for the country, where people start seeing the country as a haven for money laundering.
All right, now how does Kenya's position as a gateway into the region and a financial hub impact the cross-border currency movement and these allegations leveled against it? And of course, what are the reasons cited by various entities who say they prefer physical cash transactions over electronic transfers?
It's interesting that I always wonder personally why somebody would want to carry so much money as hard cash when you can use electronic system. If you want to buy land, if you want to buy any asset, you can use the bank to transact that. You can buy a bank check. You can transfer over the net. So I don't understand why people want to do that. So my suspicion is that people want to carry money, so such large amount of money, because they have something to hide. And that is not what we expect in a modern economy. We expect people to use existing electronic systems for such transfers, not carry money in bags around, particularly more when the country boasts itself as a leading economic country in this part of the world.
All right, so the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group has come out to say that these, if it continues unabated, poses potential risk for Kenya. So aside its image and probably economic factors, are there other potential risks that Kenya might be subjected to if it's not able to nip this in the bud?
You see, one of the biggest concerns for all of us is, where is that money going? Remember that the East African region has not been very stable politically. We talk of Al-Shabaab, we talk of drug trafficking, we talk of human trafficking. So when we have so much money going around and we don't know where it is going, it can easily be used to do illegal things. Right? As I've mentioned, it can be used for terrorism, it can be used for drug trafficking, it can be used for human trafficking, and very important, it has an effect on legitimate business in any country. So a lot of risks come out when we have such an explained large amount of money, and that should be looked at.
All right, so the assessment team expressed a concern over the Financial Reporting Center not adequately analyzing cash transaction reports to actually identify patterns or possibly offenses related to money laundering and terrorism financing. So how do you think that the FRC can enhance its data analysis strategies, and what impact could these have on the fight against dirty cash and the movement of monies that are not being accounted for or well monitored?
That's an interesting question, if I get you right, because in any economy, we always talk about two types of economy, one that is over the table and that one that's underground, or the shadow economy. And when you see a lot of such a large amount of money being transacted, there's always possibility that we have a very large shadow economy. And one of the areas that normally suffers when we have such economy is taxation. Because when people use money that we cannot account for, it is not taxed. So the whole economy suffers. And remember that one of the things that the country is trying to do is to get as much money as possible from tax. So when we have such money that is not known its origin, not only do you suffer from the ways I've explained, but you also end up suffering in terms of not getting tax from that money.
All right. Now, despite the fact that Kenya has not been grey listed yet, there's a possibility that it just might get into that pit. But then Kenya was asked to expedite the listing of lawyers and notaries as reporting agencies. So how do such reporting agencies play a role in actually detecting and preventing money laundering and, of course, terrorism financing in the country? And what improvements do you think these can go when it comes to reporting processes that have to do with the movement of illicit cash in and out of Kenya?
I think when it comes to the issue of detecting dirty money flow or money that cannot be accounted for, it cannot be one country business. We have the East African Community, we have African Union, we have World Bank, we have IMF. So all those organizations or entities that are involved in economic activities should be involved or should do their part in making sure that we reduce such illicit financial flows. So it's not a one country's business. It's everybody must play his part, whether it is IMF, whether it is World Bank, whether it is the local banks, which have been very stringent. I know the central bank has been very stringent on that, but it's not a one country affair. It is a multilateral business. Everybody must play his part because, as we have explained earlier, such illicit flows affect everybody. Even the small farmers in the countryside get affected by such illicit flows. So it must be everybody's business to fight it.
All right. So now, with Kenya being ahead of its regional peers in the East African community in terms of not being grey listed and its economic prowess and the different policies that the president is bringing on board to help buff the Kenyan markets. Now, what are the key factors that have contributed to Kenya's relatively stronger position, and how do you think the country can further enhance its measures in combating other economic issues that might tantamountly affect its economy and image negatively?
I think in the last 5 or so years, Kenya has come up with economic, some parliamentary acts or some laws that focus on economic crimes. And I guess such fraud that cannot be accounted for is under that act. The central bank has also been very, very, very active on making sure that if you are going to deposit some money in the bank, previously 10,000, I think, US dollars, now it has gone up to about 15,000 US dollars, you need to explain where that money came from. So I think there has been some very good efforts from the government or from other entities to make sure that these illegal financial flows or illicit financial flows are taken care of. But I think there's more we can do beyond that. And I have explained earlier, if we can cooperate among nations, then I'm sure this war can be easily won than a country acting on its own. Because we need to know where that money comes from. Which country does it come from? Does that country have rules that support that? Because sometimes you get money from one country, and the money is going to another country, but the rules are different. So we need some harmonization so that if you're fighting such type of illicit flow, then you can talk to each other, you can talk the same language without one person saying that this country allows this, but this one does not allow that.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Professor Lekan Iraki, economist and associate professor of economics. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you and have a good afternoon.